was the year that you went from the full-time reserves back to reserve?
2012.
It was
So
2012.
just after Afghanistan, I didn't stay in for much longer within the full-time role.
Okay. And then just to help me with the maths, so you start that again, I suppose, in 2012. And then when is the end of your career?
2019.
2019. Okay, so there's the 7 years there. And you mentioned about being reservist at weekend, and then you're being a civilian physio at different departments.
Yeah.
Is there anything in that 7 years that you can share, or was it? Yeah, what can you share from that time?
Well, as I mentioned, I struggled coming out of that full time and going to the, back to the reserves. I mean, it had been the TA when I first, it had been the Territorial Army. Then it got changed to the reserves.
So you were there with that transition?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Well, before I was mobilised, it was the Territorial Army.
Yeah.
Then I was mobilised and stayed for 8 years. But by that time I came out, it was the reserves.
Okay.
So it was even had a different name. And yes, I came out and I struggled. I struggled, as I just mentioned. And so I changed to a different field hospital, partly because I'd changed geographical location of where I was living. And my civilian job at the time then was actually with Help for Heroes. So I worked for the charity Help for Heroes, but was still a reservist as well.
Okay.
And yeah, I'd struggled with that one field hospital, and I thought maybe, it's time to move. And then, unfortunately, as time went on, I continued to struggle with the next reserve field hospital. As I say, I think I just thought that I'd get back that level of responsibility and respect, and it wasn't quite there, and I became quite unwell. And yeah, when I of those 7 years, 3 of them were actually on. I was medically discharged and downgraded for a lot of that. Some of which, I think, the last 2 years, I didn't even, I was there on paper, but I was waiting to be medically discharged.
Okay. Are you able to share what you went through? You don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, but there might be others out there listening or watching that might be able to resonate.
Yeah, so I struggled with my mental health, so depression and anxiety, but it's not PTSD, so not post-traumatic stress injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'd actually had this from much earlier on, but I didn't want to tell anyone. I was scared to tell anyone in case I got medically discharged. I didn't want to be treated different. I think to begin with, I didn't want to accept to myself that there was a problem. And of course, it was all quite strange again because of being a reservist. And there was different levels of what medical cover you could or couldn't have, as a reservist. So I still had my GP, because I wasn't always full time, so I wasn't entitled to medical treatment through the military. And yeah, so I didn't tell people for a long time, because if I didn't feel great, I just didn't go on a training weekend. Because if I had the same as if I had an injured ankle, what's the point of me going on a weekend where you're going to have to run around around the field? I wouldn't be able to do it. So the times when I wasn't well enough, I didn't go. So I'd hidden it for so long. I'd let, when I was full time, I'd let my CO and the medical officer know. But that was all that I felt that needed to know. Because I could still do my job. I'd gone and I'd been promoted, and I was a high-functioning depressive. And I knew what I was able to do. And, sometimes I'd take leave when I wasn't doing so well, just because, again, I could hide it. I could hide it that way.
You mentioned a high functioning depressive.
Yeah.
Can you explain a bit more what that might be?
So I could still go about my job. I could still... There were times where I couldn't even look after myself, and I'd have to move back to my parents when I was at my worst. I had to move back because getting out of bed, washing, eating, preparing food, the simplest of what people might consider the simplest of tasks, I couldn't do. Whereas when I say high functioning, I didn't feel good, and I didn't have emotions, or certainly no positive emotions, but I could still do my job, hide it, keep covering up. I could put the mask on for the times that I needed to put the mask on, and then let everything else fall apart when there weren't other people around, essentially. So I was able to continue working, and as I say, having been at the other level of things, of not being able to function, I could very much function and apply myself when I was in the intermediate times. So my diagnosis is Recurrent Major Depressive Disorder. So there's times when I am very, very low mood, where I'm not high functioning. But most of the time I'm at a level where I can continue and can actually do things.
Okay. And what was it that made you reach out to get help? Because I'm guessing you did at some point, right?
Yeah. 2013 was my biggest dip, and that I'd written a suicide note. I knew exactly how I was going to take my life. I'd planned those parts of it. I didn't actually take action on it because I called Samaritans. I called Samaritans actually in the first place. And actually my sister then called my doctor. In fact, I remember I was working at Help for Heroes, and I went at lunchtime to speak to one of the welfare counselling staff. And I remember being in such a state, and him saying to me, I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going into your time, with your next client." And he was like, "Sally, I've already been out and cancelled all of those because you are in a much more need at the moment than any of those." And it was through him that he wanted to call my sister, and my sister called the GP, and the GP actually then called the crisis team, and the crisis team came round. I was actually living in Salisbury at the time, and I didn't find the Salisbury crisis team very good, unfortunately. It was just a case of, well, they came and assessed me and said, "Well, just give us a call when you need us." I wasn't in a place where I would, I wouldn't have picked up the phone and asked for it. It was only my sister in the first place who had got that. So I then ended up having to go to my parents. They said, "Look, just come home. Don't worry about anything. Just come home." I literally thought I was going home for the weekend, because I thought I'll be back at work on Monday. It's just a blip. It just spiraled out of control. And I remember getting to my parents. I got the train, which was a bit stupid considering that the way that I wanted to take my life had been with the train track. And people have asked me since, "Well, what about the train driver, and what about, people on the train?" And didn't occur to me. I didn't have any thought of that at all. I just wanted it to end. So I went back to Mum. Met me at the train station. I can remember it so clearly, just crying. I was crying on the train all the way home. Mum picked me up, and then we went home, and I'd seen something on social media. I saw a picture that evening, and I just lost it. I dripping in sweat. I wanted to just run out into the road. I wanted to just have everything just stopped and ended. And my parents were, I was saying to them, look, if you loved me, why wouldn't you help kill me? Why would you see me going through this if you really, really loved me? And I think it was at that point they said, we need help. We need to get to hospital. So Mum, I remember that night, we didn't go there and then. I think they were trying to see if things changed during the night. Mum wouldn't let me sleep in my own room. She said, you're sleeping in my bed. And I was like, I just want to be on my own. Just leave me. And then the next day they took me to hospital. And again, the crisis team came and assessed me at my parents'. And yeah, then two months I didn't leave the house at my parents'. I would have to come downstairs if the crisis team were coming. They were coming most days, and that would be the only kind of, not incentive as such, but the only need. The rest of the time I was just in bed, 20 hours of every day just crying. And the other 4 hours, I was on sleeping tablets, so I'd get about 4 hours sleep. And I remember Mum bringing food, and I just wouldn't eat it, wouldn't touch it. And she was like, "You're going to be sectioned if you don't start eating." I didn't care. I just wanted to be given an injection that would just sedate me, and so I didn't have to feel or think anything. And yeah, that lasted for 6 weeks. I remember the on-call psychiatrist being called at one point, because it just wasn't getting it. My GP would ring most days, and I remember saying to him, he said, "Sally, I don't know what to do with you." I was like, "What do you mean you don't know what to do with me? What am I supposed to do if you don't know what to do with me?" And that's when the on-call psychiatrist was called, and my medication was changed, and it was increased. And it was about 5 days later I felt a sudden slight turning, that then the crisis team would say, "Right, we'll come and take you out for coffee." I don't drink coffee, but I'd then just go to, someone would pick me up. I remember them taking me to a coffee shop, and again, just sitting crying in this coffee shop. But that was better than what I'd been before. So, and then I had to get to a point. I had a treatment plan. Top of that treatment plan was no social media, because that had sort of been the trigger. It was I wasn't a phone, and even. I was at the point where I'd get text messages and I'd have to have someone with me to read the text message, because I would change it into a different meaning of any text that came through. It was just, even if someone said, "How are you?" they don't believe me. They just, I'd change it all.
So a lot of doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I had to get back to a place where I could go back home when I was living by myself, go back to work. So I had to be safe to live by myself, and then to look at going back to work. So it was quite a long journey.
Yeah. And what was your turning point that made you feel strong enough to carry on and not feel those thoughts that you had thought back then with that letter?
Oh, that took a long time. And to be honest, I still have suicidal thoughts now. They've never completely gone. They're not as frequent. But I think it was just a lot of therapy, a lot of time. Medication was changed quite a few different times, and lots of different therapies. And, my GP would say, "Sally, you are, of all my patients, you you work, so hard, but I still wasn't getting, wasn't getting better. It was a bit like my exams. I was putting the effort in, but wasn't getting the results out despite trying hard, because I desperately didn't want to feel like this. Why would anyone want to stay in this torture or this prison my mind was just a prison, and just horrible.
And how was it having that medical discharge as well? Because I'm guessing
Really
that's around the
tough.
time, right? It's around the same time.
Really tough, because I'd chosen to be. This was my hobby essentially as a reservist. I was doing my normal job, and then at a weekend, this is what I was choosing to do. So it'd been my life. It was my identity. At work, people knew me as oh, that's the army girl, even in my civvy job. And I also felt that there was times when I could still do my job, but I suppose I needed the adjustments of people's attitudes. I suppose I look back, I wasn't well as well.
Okay.
So I perhaps changed what people said in my mind. But there wasn't despite it being a field hospital, there wasn't a huge amount of compassion. And there wasn't a huge amount of understanding at all. And I kept fighting that discharge, sort of saying, well, if you just gave me a bit of time where I wasn't having pressure to actually get better, because other things happened and that would put more pressure on me. So I'd be worrying about that. So, well, I just want a period of time when I'm not having to worry about everything to get me, to get better. And I think ultimately, just so long had gone on, and then it was a case of, this isn't the environment for you anymore. And I remember, to me, it was just the biggest failure that the military no longer wanted me. And I desperately remember thinking, but I could help with mental health within the army. It was difficult because I wasn't able to get treatment, because as a reservist, you're only entitled to treatment if it's because of operations. Well, I didn't believe it to be because of Afghanistan. And if I'd have said yes, it was, I could have got treatment through them. But I still don't think it was, because I felt good when I was there. I felt like I was doing something positive and had a real purpose. And so, that was, I just kept fighting and fighting. But the therapist said to me, she said, and I'll always remember it, she said, it's a bit like the lemonade bottle and the salad. I thought, what on earth is she on about? She's lost it. I'm the one who's here for therapy, but she said, there's nothing wrong with the lemonade bottle and there's nothing wrong with the salad. And she said, it's like you and the military. There's nothing wrong with you and there's nothing wrong with the military. They just don't fit together. And sometimes that's the case, that your way of thinking and, the military. And I had such low self-esteem and self-confidence. And she said to me, do you think you're too good for the army? I looked at her again thinking, I come here every week telling you I'm no good. There's no point of me being on this earth. I can't, I might as well not be here. And she said, hear me out. She said, the military spits out the people who aren't, the military is a system, and it will spit out those people who don't fit that system. So if you're not very good and aren't able to do the basic things, then it will spit you out. But if you're too good and you challenge things and you want to do, you don't fit that system. And that did make sense. Actually, if you just wanted to play the game, then everything's fine. But if you wanted to stick your head above the parapet and perhaps do something slightly different, then that wasn't the place for you to do it. That's, perhaps somewhere else. So, and that's what she was trying to say to me, was when she said, do you think you're too good for the army? Of which, no, I don't. And was the real reason that I never applied to the regulars, because I didn't ever feel that I had the confidence to be accepted, to get in. And I'd found a way that I could have the life of a regular, essentially, but not have to have the rejection of being told you're not good enough to get in. So it was safer for me to stay as a reservist.
Okay. So you start rebuilding, you start building the blocks. And what's the year, just remind us again, that you essentially get cut from the military, right? They, as you mentioned, they split you out. What year is that?
2019.
2019.
November 2019.
We're now in 2023. So you've done some more building on yourself. What in that time have you been doing to set new goals, set new opportunities? What have you done for yourself?
So it wasn't a great time to be medically discharged. I thought, right, I'm going to take a year and I'm going to go off travelling. But then 2020 wasn't the year to go travelling. I didn't do too bad. I went to Siberia, I went to Alaska, I went to Norway, went and did lots of different things. But then that obviously all got cut. But what happened in the January, which was I felt a real turning point for me, was the Army Cadet Force asked me to be a national ambassador for them. And that was just such an honour to think, well, this one system has said that I'm no good, I don't fit there anymore. Yet this other system, which can have an impact on so many, they'd seen something in me that they felt that I could inspire young people with some of the things that I'd been through and done. And yeah, that was quite a saviour to have that, to still be able to wear a uniform, to, yes, okay, it's different, but you're imparting that knowledge that you've built up and learnt, and that community, and being part of that with a group of people that are sometimes just that bit softer, because they're not necessarily doing it for the same reasons. Different people do different things for different reasons, but genuinely these are volunteers who want to give something to enhance the lives of others. And to be asked to be, sort of forefront and centre of that type of organisation is a huge privilege. It's a responsibility, but a responsibility that I take very seriously, and think about everything I do each day, because it does impact, ultimately, it could impact other people.
Okay. How did they get in touch with you? Was you doing anything in particular for them to reach out?
I had met one of the other ambassadors, and they'd said that, they were an ambassador. I said, have they got any females? They said, no. I said, it really annoys me, of all these different things, and they don't have females, when actually, and so they put, sort of then said, actually, this is this person, this is what she's done. And by that point, I'd sort of taken my marathon running to a bit of so I'd done the first one in 2007, and then one in 2009, then that one in Afghanistan in 2011. But then in between that time, I'd gone on and done probably another 60 marathons. 60? Yeah.
60?
Yeah. Wow. So I've done 82 now. And I'd also, during that time, that 3 years of sort of when I was medically downgraded, I had also put a team together of all females, and we cycled across America. So something called the Race Across America. And yeah, I'd sort of, this is what I mean a bit about being high functioning. Although I was still able to do some things, and I mean, it was a massive stress, and it did take its toll on me. But, you know, I'd done things that had never been done before. So we were the first all-female team of wounded, injured and sick. And actually there was only 2 female teams in the whole event. And there'd only been 4 in the 13 years that the event had been running. But they'd never been, you know, in different bikes. So it was proving what you could still do, even if you had injuries or illnesses or disabilities. And I think, you know, young people need to see that there are different ways of doing things. By this point, I'd been quite open about my vulnerability and my illness. And to me, it was great that an organisation was not needing to go, well, we don't want to see, you know, we need to push you to the side. Actually, here we've got someone who's talking about it, has shown how you can learn from challenges, you can manage things better, you can improve. You know, it's always there, and I still take medication and still see a therapist, but I talk about it now, and I'm not ashamed of it, and I'm not guilty of, you know, having this awful illness. I just accept it, because that, if you had cancer, you wouldn't feel ashamed or guilty or, you know, not want to. You get the help that you need, and I feel that that's how mental illness needs to be seen. And so if young people can grow up knowing that it's all right to talk about it, and you can still go on and achieve, you might need to just put things in place to help you, but who doesn't need to in life? You know, we're all different, and we all have different needs and wants. So yeah, to sort of show young people that as well, which was the biggest boost to me.
And there's, you know, you've got plenty to do in the future with them, no doubt. So yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to feel like you can give back.
But I think it's seeing, I get so much from them as well. You know, the motto of the Army Cadets is to inspire, to achieve. But you only need to look at so many of these young people, and you're inspired by what they do, or what they, you know, the way that they do things. And you know, I see it as a two-way process.
Yeah.
It's not just me on a pedestal, or look at me, look what I've done. And actually sometimes it's come along and join me and do something. So for example, one of my marathons I chose to do in the Tower of London, and I got 6 cadets to come and do not the full marathon, but they'd each do a leg with me. I mean, how many cadets get the chance to, well, first of all, there'd never been a marathon in the Tower of London. There'll never be one again, because they've now, you know, it's been done differently. It's been renovated, and the garden area, the moat area isn't there. But these 6 cadets can say that they, you know, supported a marathon. And by the end, they were there going, we've ran 10K each. I was like, yeah, I know you have. And if that inspires them to go on and, you know, run, and, you know, that's them, that it impacts, you know, in the future, you know, their children, their families, their lifestyle, their health. You know, the ripple effect of any positivity within such a big organisation is massive.
And it sounds like you're getting stuff from it in the short time, the 3 years that you've been part of that. So that's exciting to see what that brings. But let's go back to your marathon side. You said 82.
Yeah.
You've done 82 marathons in your life.
Yeah.
That's a lot. What inspires you to do them? And can you talk more about the collection of 82 that you've done?
So I am a little bit different with the marathons that I do. So I very much believe it's not about being the fastest or the fittest, but I feel it's about going out, having fun, enjoying yourself, and for me also raising money and awareness for charities. And so my little claim to fame is that I'm the only person in the world that's ran a marathon on every continent dressed as a different piece of fruit.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is, first of all, it makes people smile, and it's always nice to make people smile. But then they'll quite often ask me why. Why am I dressed as an apple, orange, banana? And I tell them that I desperately want to break the stigma associated with mental ill health. And quite often they'll say that maybe they've had a problem or someone that they know has had a problem. And it just really subtly starts that conversation. So in a strange way, by attracting attention, the cause that I'm passionate about, because I just don't want anyone to ever have to feel like I felt. And I know when I got the help, I was in a really bad place. And I always say to people that you would never learn to swim in a storm. And so when you're at crisis point, you can't take on the information that you're being told. But if we learn that information and what we need to do to help us when we're in that situation, then it gives you, hopefully you won't get to that bad point because you can deploy those tactics beforehand. But means if you do, you've got the tools there to help you. And yeah, I would do anything for anyone to have that. I know, sadly, many people who've taken their lives, and I also know the friends and family of people who've taken their lives and the toll that it has on them. As I said, when I was uneducated, when I was very unwell and I just couldn't see any way out, I didn't think about anyone else. Whereas now I've probably got that as a bit of a safety net, the impact that it would have on other people. I often felt that I wish my life had been taken in Afghanistan, because I wouldn't have to still be going through the difficulty of your mind being so horrible. The outcome would be the same, but you wouldn't have to, friends and family wouldn't be thinking, could I have done anything? Is it something I said? I didn't notice. There wouldn't be that guilt or potential guilt on their part, but I wouldn't have to still be living with that really, tricky brain and challenge.
But the marathons give you challenges that you set for yourself. I'm guessing you're organising the next one soon, maybe.
Yeah, I now use it as I said, ways to promote mental well-being. So, and I do that in all kinds of ways. So after about 50 marathons, someone said, "You're completely nuts." And I thought, what a good idea. So I got a nut costume, had a sign on me that said, "Nuts about mental health, together we can crack it," and got the Guinness World Record for the fastest marathon dressed as a nut. And then during the pandemic, I think a lot of people struggled with their mental health. And I had an idea that I could do a marathon in the London Eye. So I thought about the highs and lows, or the ups and downs that the pandemic was having on the nation's mental health. And, we were all going round, each day, and we were stuck in the UK in a bubble. You had to have your bubble of people. I could only see people through a screen. And it was just to symbolise what the impact the pandemic was having on the nation's mental health. And then 6 days later...
Hang on, how did you do that on the London Eye?
So I got a treadmill in the London Eye.
In a pod?
Yeah, and ran a marathon dressed as an orange in the pod on a treadmill.
How hot was that?
It was pretty warm.
Yeah, in an orange.
Yeah. But then, even though the London Marathon that year had said, "Do it your way," #do it your way, because I'd done it on a treadmill, they wouldn't count it. So I was like, okay, don't worry. So I finished that marathon, got off the treadmill, went back to my hotel, got changed into a lemon costume, started another marathon straight after. I went past the Bells of St Clement's. So the nursery rhyme, "Oranges and Lemons," past the Bells of St Clement's. I did a second marathon so that I could get the medal to say that I'd done that marathon. It just took me 2 marathons to do that.
Wow.
And then, 6 days later on World Mental Health Day, I did the world's deepest underground marathon. So we called it Beneath the Surface, because you never know what's going on beneath the surface, and got the Guinness World Record for the world's deepest underground marathon.
Where was that?
It was in North Yorkshire, at a potash mine So it was out under the North Sea.
Wow.
Doing a marathon.
Amazing. And you were telling me about one. Oh, no, this is something else. We'll come back to that. That's a different event.
Right, yeah.
But is there anything else you want to share with the marathon? Because, yeah, you've done so many, but is there anything else you want to share?
So earlier this year, I took on another challenge of running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 consecutive days. So I'd already done a marathon on every continent, but that was over quite a long period of time, a couple of years. And then I had actually seen this for a couple of years, and I'd been wanting to do it. It'd taken 4 years to get the funding and to actually do it. But earlier this year, I took that on because I really wanted to take the mental health message around the world. And, there's a real crisis of mental health around the world. And I thought in my own little way, I can highlight that we need to do something about it. And even if that's just talking, men particularly don't talk, and that can lead to a lot of things being internalised. And I don't want anyone else to have to go through losing someone, or, as I say, how I felt. I don't want that for people. So, that was something. And I was the first female veteran to ever do that, and one of only 5 British women as well. And it was a challenge.
Yeah.
Mental and physical challenge.
Yeah. And first one as a fruit, or?
No, well, this one I actually did, the Antarctica one, I did it dressed as a pod of peas.
Okay.
Because I knew it was going to be cold and I'd be frozen. So I thought I'd be frozen peas. But again, it was an organised event. So there was 45 people doing it. But on that first day, when we were doing the marathon in Antarctica, everybody had got goggles on. They'd got their hoods up. You couldn't see any part of them. So you didn't know who anyone was. They all knew who I was because this great big green pod of peas was running along. I signed up to what I thought was a marathon in Mongolia across a frozen lake. And I thought it was just a marathon. And I got there on the first day and I said, I think I'm in the wrong place. Everyone else is talking about this kind of ultra 100 miles. I said, I thought I was here for a marathon. And they said, yeah, that's right. We're doing a marathon today. It's just there's an ultra the next day and the next day. I was like, oh, right, okay. But I chose to be a chili pepper because I thought if I'm going to be freezing cold, I might as well look red hot. So, kind of thought, what's the next for 3 marathons? So cracked on and did that.
Did that as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I'd ran the length of Iceland dressed as a pod of peas as well. Anything that just raises a bit of awareness, raises a bit of money.
Yeah.
And it takes out you don't have to be fast. I always say, for me, my anxiety is something that if you put pressure on me, I won't do very well. So if I'm going for a certain time and I have to get that certain time and other things dependent on it, I probably wouldn't do very well because that anxiety builds and builds. So now if people will say to me, what time are you going for? I just say the time of my life, because I'm in control of that. I'm in control of if I chat to people along the way. I can't control the weather. I can't control, if my hamstring goes or something like that. But if I enjoy it, then, as I say, I just go for the time of my life. And it reduces that pressure, reduces the stress. And, it's a different way of looking at it.
Good mindset to have. So question, is it, I want to say easier, but that's not the right word. If you had the choice between running on extra cold, like Antarctica, or extra hot in the desert, what is better? What is it's not easier. What would you prefer? Would you prefer to be really cold, breathing in that ice air, or would you prefer to be extra hot in the desert with dry heat?
Good question, and answers in different ways, because it was just an immense privilege to be in Antarctica, because how many people get to go to Antarctica? And I've been twice now. I've ran once as a fruit and once as a vegetable. But I've also been in searing heat of the Sahara. So I took on something called the Marathon des Sables, which was 6 marathons in, it's actually 6.5, because after you've finished, you have a solidarity half marathon. So 6.5 marathons in 7 days across the Sahara Desert, whilst carrying all your own kit. And that was hot. That was really, really hot. And the sand gives you blisters on your feet. And I had a really unfortunate experience that on my first day, I got to one of the checkpoints and I vomited everywhere. I wasn't well. And then on the second day, it was the other end that I was having problems with. And then on the third day, my obviously I was quite dehydrated, and my tent mate, in the middle of the night, I thought, I'll just reach for my water bottle. So I had some water. I thought, that doesn't taste right. And so I then got another bottle. And in the morning, I drank from that. And then in the morning, I said to my tent mate, I saw this bright orange bottle on my bed. And I said, what electrolyte drink are you using? And he went, oh, no, you don't want to drink that. I said, no, I already have. And I realised that he had got feet that were too blistered to take the 20 steps out of the tent to go to the loo. So he'd used the water bottle that I had then drank. But then on the last day, someone said to me at the airport, how did you find it? And I said, well, on the first day, vomited. Second day, diarrhoea. Third day, I drank my tent mate's pee. And he went, that was you. He said, you inspired me whenever I was feeling that I couldn't carry on. I just thought, at least I'm not that girl who's drank her tent mate's pee. So I always say to people now, you never know when your actions are inspiring other people.
Yeah,
So
very good. So we're going to put them on par, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Regarding.
Yeah, I've got.
Like you say, it's a privilege, right?
I've got horror stories, but yeah, to think, Mongolia was so much colder than Antarctica. But
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But both times, I think I've just thought, how lucky am I to be here?
Yeah. Okay. I just remember cold runs out in Germany. Like, was that -5, -10, and
Yeah. No such thing as bad weather. It's just bad clothing, poor clothing choice.
Fair point. So you've done the running aspect. I also believe you like to swim.
I've done a bit of swimming, yes.
So what have you done in that aspect? You haven't done 82 marathon swims, have you?
No. I was part of a team last week that was swimming the Channel. And I had previously been part of a team of all females that had swam the Channel. But recently this year, I've had a couple of other different events. So one of them was, it was actually a triathlon called Escape from Alcatraz. And I chose to do it, not surprisingly, in a different way to everyone else. So everybody was in wetsuits, and it involved swimming from Alcatraz to the shore for the swim. And that water is quite treacherous. There's quite severe currents, and you jump off a boat. So I decided, well, Alcatraz is a prison, and it just reminded me that for me, mental illness is like being a prisoner in your own brain. So I dressed as a convict. So when everybody else was jumping off the boat in their wetsuit, I was more visible. And I kind of thought, well, this is a way of making the invisible illness visible. So I jumped off, and as the current was strong, I was swimming and really, fighting, and thought, I'm not getting anywhere. And I thought, that's been like my mental health at times. I've been fighting against it and fighting and not getting anywhere. And I thought, I just need to go with the flow. So I went with the flow and got to the side of the bank, and kind of regrouped and thought, okay, I'll get to transition and I'll get on my bike. Now, the bike ride in San Francisco is very hilly. So I thought, this is like the highs and lows, or the ups and downs of mental health again. And then got off the bike, gone to the run, and the run went alongside the Golden Gate Bridge. And I remember just thinking, wow, this is like bridging the gap, that you can escape from Alcatraz, you can escape from mental illness with support of friends and family and professionals. And yeah, it was just really poignant to me how this iconic triathlon was so, the similarities that there was to mental illness. It's not saying that it's going away, the same as Alcatraz is still there, but you can change the way that you manage it and manage it rather than have it manage you.
Wow. Amazing. And really nicely put together there. So that's really cool. But you briefly touched on the swim in the channel as a very, I did that. That's an amazing feat because it's 20, what is it, 22 miles?
Yeah, 22 miles, but that's as the crow flies.
Okay.
But obviously the currents take you in more of an S shape. And I was actually doing this with a team of other veterans who had all had different injuries or disabilities. A good friend of mine, he had a very severe stroke, and so he could only use one arm and one leg. And when you see someone with that sheer amount of determination swimming for an hour, for the qualifying swim, we all had to be able to swim for 2 hours in a temperature of less than 16 degrees. And we're not wearing wetsuits. But actually for Mark, the swimming wasn't the difficult bit. It was getting back into the boat is what he found most difficult. So things that, you and I or an able person body wouldn't find particularly challenging, that was massive for him. One of the other swimmers, he also couldn't use one of his arms. Another one had an amputation below the knee. So yeah, all different, with just all veterans coming together and sort of showing that you can achieve things. And we were 3 miles off because unfortunately the tides weren't in our favour. But to see someone with one arm and one leg being able to swim and want to show others and want to help others that you can do more than you think you can was just an incredible thing to be part of. And the amount that we did swim was actually 36 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to you and the rest of the veterans that did that. That's really cool. So I think that does bring us up to date. Was there anything we didn't get to cover, particularly maybe in your journey or during your time in service? Was there anything we didn't get to cover? Or
I suppose really that, from a physiotherapy point of view, yes, there is actually one key thing which is quite fun at this point. So I mentioned at the beginning how it had taken me 6 years to get into being a physiotherapist, and then the extra 3 years to train and qualify. So it was 1991 when I first applied. And 30 years later, the university that had turned me down for 6 years in a row which is the university I ended up going to in Nottingham, they contacted me and said that they would like to award me with an honorary doctorate.
Oh,
so
nice.
Dr. Orange.
Dr. Orange.
Now.
Fantastic.
And yeah, so to having, just showing people that if you really do want something, I was able to get there, I was able to finish and qualify. And then I've been so fortunate to volunteer at the Commonwealth Games, at the Paralympic Games, and do lots of incredible things all over the world with that skill, and then to be honoured for the work that I've done for mental health, but also in the physiotherapy world as well, was a real honour. And now I I don't do as much physiotherapy now, but I do more inspirational speaking, because I want others to see that through adversity can, strengthen your character, and you can go on and do things that you perhaps never thought possible. It doesn't have to be running a marathon or swimming an ocean. It might be getting yourself out that front door on the days that you think that you can't. It might be brushing your teeth on the days when, or getting a shower on those bad days. So it's kind of using and I still have those bad days, but I think also recognising that's okay, and that every day can't be 100%. and just being kind to yourself. And getting those messages across to people from my different challenges and endurance events, that there is hope, really, and that you can choose. And hope now to me stands for hold on, pain ends, because at times I never ever thought with the depression that would ever end. And yes, it's not completely gone, but it's very much more dampened and managed.
That's good. Well, great that they acknowledged you with everything you've done, but didn't the British Empire also acknowledge you for something?
I did get a letter a few months ago saying that, yes, that I have received an MBE, which I actually stand for Marathon Babe Extraordinaire. But incredibly honoured for my services to mental health and charity, because I've raised over £800,000 now for over 50 different charities. So in November I'll be going to the Palace. I was very fortunate, actually. I do a lot of work with the Duke of Edinburgh's award, and I was actually speaking at Buckingham Palace earlier this year, and I say to people, just be you. So I went dressed as an orange.
Did you?
Yeah.
At Buckingham Palace?
Yeah. So I had an orange dress on, orange shoes, orange fascinator, and then a great big slice of orange costume on top.
Amazing.
And when I met Prince Edward, he said, so what's with the orange? And I said, it's my name. He said, oh, right, okay then. I'm not quite sure what I'll wear this time. I don't think I'll go as a banana.
Okay. So just to confirm, you are technically now Major Retired Dr. Sally Orange MBE.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
That's right, yes.
Okay, quite a lot. And on top of all of that, with all of the stuff you did with the marathons and everything like that, I believe you hold a collection of Guinness World Records, don't you? So how many are you currently holding?
Guinness ones is 6, but there's a couple of other world firsts and things that aren't recognised by the Guinness Book of Records, but
still pretty impressive. I mean, having one is like, wow.
But the great thing about them is when it's being the fastest marathon dressed as a piece of fruit, it doesn't belittle anyone else. It just it makes people smile.
Yeah.
And then to say, I've got one as a fruit and one as a nut because I'm completely fruity and nuts. So it's just a play on. I did actually run a marathon this year, the London Marathon, dressed as a cream cracker because I'm completely crackers about mental health.
Brilliant. But all of this, like you say, it starts conversation. So really, really good. But thank you so much. This is a great time in your episode for us to hear some advice from yourself. So the first advice I'd love you to share would be for people that are thinking of joining the military. It may not be reserves, it may not be regular, just join the military as a whole. Any advice for those people?
Yeah, just go and be yourself and be open to opportunities and say yes to opportunities, because it's much easier to say yes and then turn it down later than not to actually to miss out on an opportunity because of fear. Because we all have fear, we all have intrepidation and should we or shouldn't we, but more often than not, it's when you step out of your comfort zone and challenge yourself that is where the magic happens. So I'd say just go for it. Do your research as to which service might be best for you, and give it your all, give it 100%, because you definitely, the more you put in life, you get out. Very good advice.
And the other bit of advice is for veterans. Now, this could be for people that are about to leave the military and become a veteran for the first time, or perhaps been out for a while. Any advice for veterans out there?
Yeah, again, it can be a difficult time. It can be that transition from something that you know to the unknown. You can look at it in 2 ways. You can see it with fear, and it can also be really exciting as well. The world is a big place. The world is your oyster. And perhaps if there was things, sometimes if there was things in the military that didn't suit you, that you can go ahead and do now. Because I think we often look back at things with rose-tinted glasses. And whilst that's good and we can see we had a great time, there were probably things that you potentially missed out on or couldn't do. Just think of spending time at Christmas with families, or, it doesn't have to be something great. It just could be, making sure that each day counts, and whether that be for yourself, your families, just make every day count, and go out there and let the world know who you are and what you've learned from being in the military. And if you can be that role model for other people with those values and standards that you've learned, then, the world is going to be a better place with people like you.
Great stuff. Lovely advice there. Lovely advice. Well, that brings us to the end. How was it for you? How was it to come on the show?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Really easy to chat. It's surprising what you delve up from memories and what comes up, and I hope people have enjoyed it and they listen to the other podcasts that you do as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing everything you have. Like you say, those memories when you get chatting pop into your brain, and you shared them, which is great, and also for your time. So thank you for giving up some of your time. I know you're very, very busy, so thank you for giving that up for the show.
You're welcome. You too, and let's not forget that you're actually a veteran as well, and that veterans supporting veterans is where the world can be a better place, because we've got the same values and standards, and if we share them to the wider world and community, then hopefully it is a better place. So thank you very much for your time and inviting me.
That's all right. And lastly, I say this to all my guests: thank you for your service.
And I would say thank you for your service as well.
No worries. Thanks very much. Thanks, Ali. It's been great.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
This has been Military Veterans Podcast. Out.